Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a massive deep dive into the incredibly rich, interwoven mythology of one of pop culture's absolute biggest franchises, Naruto. But listen, we aren't just going to sit here and summarize plot points, right? We're looking way under the hood. We're talking the foundational architecture of this universe, the philosophy, the absolutely insane powers, and those repeating generational tragedies that really define the whole shebang.
So, let's start with a mystery. How exactly did two towering stone statues, carved into the sides of a fictional, battle-scarred ravine, come to symbolize the end of an entire generational curse? Well, to figure that out, we have to decode the massive visual and thematic puzzle sitting right at the heart of this story. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Roots of Hatred.
Okay, so before we talk about the legendary characters who literally broke the world, we really have to look at the philosophical conflict that built it. What we have here are two perfectly opposed ideologies. On one side, you've got the curse of hatred. This started with the ancestor Indra Otsutsuki and his descendants, the Uchiha clan. It's all about prioritizing power, and it usually bubbles up through intense grief, pushing people into darkness out of self-interest or, just fiercely protecting their own immediate circle. On the flip side, we have the will of fire. This comes from Indra's brother, Asura, and the Senju clan. This ideology, it's entirely about selfless sacrifice, putting yourself on the line for the greater good, specifically the village. And this clash wasn't just a polite disagreement. It was a vicious, bloody feud passed down for centuries.
Section 2. The God of Shinto.
So, let's zoom in a bit from that macro philosophy. How does this will of fire actually physically manifest? Enter Konoha's founder, Hashirama Senju. Now, Hashirama wasn't just strong. He was literally plugged into the earth itself through Sage Mode, specifically the Shikotsu Woods variant. It's this insane heightened state where he perfectly mixes the natural energy of the world around him with his own physical and spiritual chakra. Figuring this out gave Hashirama near-infinite chakra and earned him the absolutely wild title of God of Shinobi.
And when Hashirama actually weaponized that natural energy to defend his ideals, well, the scale is just mind-boggling. I mean, look at this. He could summon Sage Art Wood-style Shinsu Senju. That's a colossal, multi-armed wooden construct so unbelievably massive it could physically grab and obliterate a perfect Susanoo, which, remember, is already a giant, mountain-busting avatar of pure chakra. This was the literal, ultimate physical embodiment of the will of fire defending its home.
Section 3. Evolution of an anti-villain.
Of course, you absolutely cannot have the ultimate defender without the ultimate challenger. And for Madara Uchiha, trauma and the curse of hatred forged an entirely different flavor of power. Our sources make it super clear that Madara is way more compelling than just some one-dimensional bad guy. His endgame? Casting the infinite Tsukuyomi over the entire planet, basically a global illusion, a dream world where every single person gets exactly what they want. Because he was so traumatized by losing his brothers to endless war, Madara decided humanity was completely beyond saving by normal means. So he becomes an anti-villain. He's driven by this radical, totally forced vision of peace, where war and death are just gone.
Madara's actual escalation into an apocalyptic threat is honestly a terrifying vertical climb. Let's walk through it. Step 1. He awakens the Mangekyo Sharingan by severing his closest bonds. Step 2. He takes his dying brother's eyes to unlock the eternal Mangekyo, curing his blindness. Then, Step 3. Fast forward decades, he's resurrected via the Edo Tansei reanimation technique, but with Hashirama's own wood-style cells surgically grafted into his body, so now he's mixing Senju and Uchiha powers. And finally, Step 4, he literally absorbs the demonic God Tree to become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. He gains straight-up godlike powers to cast his planetary illusion. It is just an unprecedented leap in power.
Section 4. The Valley of the End.
Okay, so let's look at how these clashing ideologies and those massive, literal godlike powers got anchored to a single, iconic location. That original cataclysmic battle between Hashirama and Madara literally scarred the earth. It carved out a massive ravine that served as the border between the land of fire and sound. And to memorialize that historic clash, two towering statues of the founders were carved right into the cliffsides, locked into the traditional shinobi sparring seal of confrontation. It's this breathtaking environmental metaphor. Two titans forever locked in a staring contest right over a rushing waterfall.
But here's the thing. This valley didn't just host that one battle. It became the cyclical stage for a repeating generational tragedy. Take a look at this timeline. First, you have that era of founders clash, Hashirama versus Madara. Then, years later at the end of Part 1, Naruto and Sasuke clash in the exact same spot, tragically mirroring their ancestors. And finally, in the Shippuden era, they come right back here for the ultimate final rematch. The valley is basically a giant magnet for the cycle of hatred.
Section 5. Heart under blade. Now, to actually understand how this massive cycle ends, we need to bring the conflict way down, from world-ending gods to the micro level. We have to look at the internal, emotional struggle of our protagonist, Naruto Uzumaki. And this perfectly connects the series' magic system to real-world linguistic philosophy. Our sources dive deep into the actual etymology of the kanji for ninja. Check this out. It's formed by the character for heart, placed directly underneath the character for blade. It's this beautiful idea that a true warrior has to perfectly balance their collective, empathetic heart with their individual capacity for violence.
So where does Naruto actually learn that balance? He learns it right at the start from his teacher, Iruka. Iruka had this realization: if I'd been a better teacher, a better self, maybe neither of us would have come to this. Guys, this was the emotional turning point for the entire franchise. By martyring himself to protect Naruto and, crucially, acknowledging him as a human being instead of a demon, Iruka totally shattered Naruto's isolation. This is the will of fire in action on a one-to-one level. It taught Naruto early on that true strength comes from connecting to others, not dominating them.
Section 6. Breaking the cycle.
And that leads us directly into the narrative's climax, where this modern generation attempts an ultimate resolution to their founder's ancient beef. During this final clash between Naruto and Sasuke at the Valley of the End, we see a totally devastating escalation of power. But here is what really matters. The sheer, raw force of their clashing ideals completely destroys the landscape. They literally shatter those giant founder statues. Think about that. The stone symbols of the past's unresolved hatred are physically dismantled by the new generation desperately trying to forge a different path.
And out of all that destruction comes what is honestly one of the most brilliant visual metaphors in modern storytelling. As those massive statues crumble apart, the severed stone hands of Hashirama and Madara fall, cross over each other, and settle at the very bottom of the waterfall. By doing so, they inadvertently form the seal of reconciliation. It's incredible, right? Mutual, devastating destruction finally gives way to understanding and connection. Naruto's stubborn, persistent will of fire actually manages to purge the curse of hatred out of Sasuke.
The impact this imagery had on the audience is just profound. Take a look at this insightful quote from a community discussion board we pulled from the sources. A user pointed out that if they ever rebuild those statues, they should change it to where they aren't locked in eternal combat, but are instead making the unison sign over the waterfall, a bridge. Talk about hitting the nail on the head. It shows just how deeply this thematic resolution resonates. It was never just about who punches harder. It's about finally building a bridge over a massive chasm of historical trauma.
So that leaves us with a pretty big question. If a generational curse of hatred can finally be broken by the persistent will of fire, what cycles in our own history are we waiting to reconcile? Yes, this explainer is covering a fictional world, but the blueprint for moving from a seal of confrontation to a seal of reconciliation, that's incredibly real. Thank you so much for diving into this with me. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.